Welcome to the video solution for the Open Awards Reading Paper 3 Functional Skills English Level 2 exam. In this video we're going to go through the whole paper, break down the texts and the questions and see how we would answer them in our exam. Question 1. Raheem and Gemma in text 1 explain what they think about mobile phones. Give one fact and one opinion either of them uses to support their point of view. Okay, so this is actually just a fact and opinion question with a bit of extra context. So what a lot of students do for this question is they get bogged down with this part of the question where it says explain what they think about mobile phones. And they think that they need to write a really long answer explaining what Raheem and Gemma think about mobile phones. But if we read this question carefully, it's not actually what it's asking us. This first sentence is just context, so they're just telling us what the text is about. So text 1 shows Raheem and Gemma explaining what they think about mobile phones. The question that we're actually concerned with is this next sentence. Give one fact and one opinion either of them uses to support their point of view. So basically they're just asking us to pick a fact and an opinion from the text, from either Raheem's contribution or Gemma's contribution. Okay, so if we have a look in Raheem's contribution, we've got an opinion straight away, so it makes communicating with others really easy. So that's his opinion. That word easy is what we call subjective, it's not provable. But then that is followed by a fact, so you can call, you can text, you can WhatsApp. These are all things that we can do. We have the ability to do on a mobile phone, so that would be a fact. Then we've got an opinion. It's great if you're meeting someone and you're late, so again it's his opinion that it's great. In this next sentence we've got a fact and opinion in the same sentence, so the fact would be that you can do video calls as well, so we have the ability to do video calls. But this part, it's as if they are with you in the room, is Raheem's opinion. So we've got lots of facts and opinions just in that first paragraph. There are more which you could pick out as well. So let's have a quick look in Gemma's. So straight away she opens with an opinion, quite a strong one. Mobile phones are ruining real interaction. So that's her take, her opinion, her point of view on mobile phones. Then we have a fact. I was on the train yesterday and everyone was silently staring at their phone. No one was talking to a real person. So this is verifiable, something that happened. She was on the train and saw this happen, so that is what we would call a fact. So if we have a look at our written solution, we've got an opinion from Raheem. So Raheem thinks that mobile phones make communicating with others really easy, which is an opinion. So we've got first mark there, and then we've chosen a fact from Gemma saying that no one was talking to a real person. With these fact and opinion questions, make sure that you make it really clear which one is a fact and which one is an opinion. Don't just write two quotations down, because the examiner won't know which one you think is a fact or which one you think is an opinion. Question 2. What does Raheem imply when he uses the words "you can also check up on them" to see where they are? Okay, so this is a 1 mark question just asking us what is implied. Now if you see this word imply, that just means what is the writer suggesting. So we're looking at this phrase here. You can also check up on them to see where they are. We can see that that is here in the text, and he says not sure if that's good or bad. So to answer this question, we need to think about any reasons as to why the author might want to check up on someone. So we could think of something like if you in real life wanted to check up on someone, you might just wonder what they're doing. You might be worried about them, or you might even be suspicious about what they're doing. So we're just looking for any sort of valid reason here as to why Raheem or anyone might want to check up on someone. So in the written solution here, we've got Raheem is implying that you can see where people are as you might be worried about them, and that would be enough to get you the 1 mark there. Question 3. Identify the main reason why Gemma is against mobile phones. Explain why you think this. Okay, so this is a 2-mark question and we've got this phrase, explain why you think this. So for 2 marks here, the first mark comes from identifying, so just giving the main reason why Gemma is against mobile phones. And we'll talk a bit about how we work out the main reason in a minute. Then our second mark comes from our explanation. So basically just work backwards and explain to the examiner how you work that out. What tells you that that is the main reason that she's against mobile phones? Okay, so when we're thinking about the main reason that an author thinks something, there's a few things that we can look at. So do they mention something more than once? So do they keep coming back to one point and mentioning others, but they mention this one point more than once? Do they link other things to this point? So give examples and link those examples to one point. That could indicate that it's the main reason or the most important reason to them. And are there any organisational features that point us towards that reason? So is it in bold or anything like that? Now, if we look in Gemma's contribution, remember we're only looking at Gemma here and we're working out the main reason why she's against mobile phones. So she opens her contribution by saying mobile phones are ruining real interaction. Now, often authors will open their text with the most important thing or their main point. So that's a little bit of a clue there. We can also see that Gemma gives lots of examples. So she says she sees so many people, young and old, wandering around staring at their phones rather than looking at other people. I was on the train yesterday and everyone was silently staring at their phone. No one was talking to a real person. How many times have you had a conversation interrupted by someone's phone ringing? Or when you're talking to someone and they get a message and say, sorry, I must get this. It's so infuriating. So Gemma here is given lots of examples to support this idea that mobile phones are ruining real interaction. So that's another clue that mobile phones ruining real interaction is the main reason she's against mobile phones. Also, if we just look at how much we've highlighted there, half of the text or half of her contribution to the text is talking about how mobile phones are ruining real interaction, giving examples to support that. Then we've got one paragraph on 2 other reasons. So we've got people store so much information on their phones. We've got a little bit of a paragraph on that, and then the last paragraph talks about causing accidents. So the majority of her contribution is to do with how mobile phones are ruining real interaction. So that's another thing that tells us that that's the main reason why she's against mobile phones. So the reason, or the main reason why Gemma is against mobile phones is because they're ruining real interaction or stopping people from having in-person interactions. So that's our first mark. Then we need to explain why. So any of those reasons that we've just talked about, we only need to give one reason because it's only worth 1 mark. So here the student has said, I know this because Gemma gives several examples of this happening and expresses annoyance towards it. Then they've given an example of that just to support their point. So for example, when she was on a train, no one was talking to one another. So that's a really full explanation as to how they've worked that out from the text for the second mark there. Often students forget about this explanation as to why they think this, but it's really important because you can't get the second mark without your explanation. Identify 2 organisational features used by the author of text 2. Give 2 examples of information which the features you have identified help you to find. Okay, so this is a 4-mark organisational features question. And although it's 4 marks, we don't actually have to write that much or spend that much time on it as long as we know how we can get the marks. Okay, so remember, an organisational feature is a visual feature which helps the reader to navigate the text. So we've got various examples, so headings, subheadings, bold text, underlined text, footnotes, bullet points, and images. Now that's not an exhaustive list. Make sure you go and look back at your revision if you're not sure on organisational features. Okay, so let's break down the marking here then. So it's worth 4 marks. We get the first 2 marks just from identifying 2 organisational features. So that's our first 2 marks. Then we need to give examples of information which the features have helped us to find. So whenever you're asked for examples, they want you to pull something directly from the text. So if I give you an example here, we've got our main heading at the top here, which is technology addiction. Now just be really careful here, because a lot of students make the mistake of saying the Fort Journal is actually the heading. This is actually the name of the journal. This is what we call an academic article, and often you'll see the word journal, an academic journal that's referring to. So the Fort is the name of the journal there. This is also similar if you've got a newspaper article. Often they'll have the name of the newspaper at the top. So just make sure that you're identifying the right thing as the heading. It usually is going to summarise what the text is going to be about. So that's going to be a big clue to working out which is the heading. And using our knowledge of what headings are as organisational features, we know that they summarise what the text is going to be about. So the information that we can get from this heading is that we know that the text is going to be about technology addiction. So if we have a look in our model solution here, we've got one organisational feature used by the author of text 2 is a heading. Another is the subheadings. So there are our first 2 marks there. Then our next 2 marks we need to give the examples. So the heading helps us to find out a summary of what the text is going to be about. So it's going to be about technology addiction. And the subheadings give us information on what the key problems are. For example, sleep, isolation and health. So we've got the next 2 marks there for giving the examples. Make sure when you're doing this answer, you make it clear which organisational feature you're referring to for which example. So try and write in full sentences as much as you can. So for this question, they're not asking you about the function of the organisational features. They're wanting you to use the organisational feature to pull information from the text. So what information does that organisational feature tell you? Give a definition of technology as stated in text 2 and explain 2 ways in which people can become isolated. Okay, so this is a 3-mark question. So the first mark comes from just a straightforward definition of technology. Now remember, for definition questions, the first thing we want to look for is any presence of a glossary where it might be defined, or if there's a footnote where it's defined. Because if it is defined for you in the text, the exam board are only going to accept that wording. So that's why it's really important to check for those 2 things before you use a dictionary or anything like that. So if we have a look in the text for the word technology, we can see that that is first mentioned here in the first paragraph. And it does have a little star next to it. Now if we see a little star, or sometimes it can be a little 1 or a 2, that means that it's referencing a footnote. So if we have a look at the bottom, we can see that we've got this star here, and that is our definition of technology. So technology is defined as a computer, tablet or phone. So that is mark number 1, just giving that definition straight from the text. The next part of the question for our next 2 marks is we need to explain 2 ways in which people can become isolated. So again, we need to look through the text and see if we can see that word isolated used. And well, we've got a subheading called isolation. So if we look under that, it's used in the first sentence. And this time we've got 2 stars. So if we go back to the bottom of the text, we can see that we've got our second footnote here with the 2 stars. And it says, people can become isolated by spending time in their own worlds, using music streaming devices, playing games, or reading about others. So any 2 of those would be our next 2 marks. So if we just have a look at our written solution here, technology means a computer, tablet or phone. So that's our straightforward definition of technology from the footnote. And then one way in which people can become isolated is by spending time in their own worlds, again taken directly from the footnote. Another is by using music streaming devices, again taken from the footnote. So we've got our next 2 marks there. So a lot of the time these questions and these definition questions specifically will be testing whether you can use organisational features in text like glossaries and footnotes. So that's why it's really important to check for those things before we go on to use a dictionary or our own knowledge to define things. With this question, a lot of students make the mistake of writing some things that we can see in the isolation paragraph. So something like losing social skills, such as how to speak to someone face to face, making eye contact, and using appropriate body language. Now, these are not relevant because these are not the ways in which people can become isolated. These are relating to the negative effects of isolation. So that's why it's really important to read that question carefully. Question 6. Identify one example of a rhetorical question in text 3 and explain its impact on the reader. So this is a 2-mark language features question. So rhetorical question is an example of a language feature. So you need to be able to know what one of those is to answer this question. And we should know from our revision that a rhetorical question is just a question that doesn't need answering. So it's used for a different effect rather than to get an answer from the reader. So when a question asks you for an example, we usually need to pull something directly from the text. So we can look out for a question mark, which we've got here in the text, and we just need to check that that is a rhetorical question. So it's something that the author's not expecting an answer from. So did you know that 80% of all 16 to 75-year-olds own a mobile phone? So that is not something that the author wants the reader to say yes or no to. It's just simply there to get the reader thinking about the topic and maybe their own mobile phone use as well. We've got another example down here. Are you prepared to take up my challenge? So either of those would be fine for your example of your rhetorical question for your first mark. Then we need to explain its impact on the reader for our second mark. So this is where our effects knowledge comes in. So our knowledge of the effects of language techniques. So if we have a look in the model solution, the example that they've given is, did you know that 80% of all 16 to 75-year-olds own a mobile phone for their first mark. Then they've explained the impact on the reader. So it makes them think more deeply about their mobile phone use for 1 mark. A good way of thinking about rhetorical questions is if you think about if you're asked a question in real life, often the person who is asking you it is wanting you to think about the topic. And that's basically what a rhetorical question does in texts. If we were to choose this one as an example and think about the effect of that, it's a similar effect. So again, it's encouraging the reader to think about something, but here they're encouraging the reader to think about whether they are prepared to take up the challenge. They might want to know more about what the challenge is about. Another effect of rhetorical questions is they're often persuasive devices. So the whole overall purpose of this text is to try and get people to switch off their phones for charity. So the rhetorical questions are designed to make the reader reflect on their own mobile phone usage and therefore be more persuaded to give up their mobile phones for charity. Just a small note when thinking about the effect of rhetorical questions and language techniques in general, it's not enough to just learn generic effects of certain language techniques and write them down. We need to make that really specific to the text that we're talking about. So make sure that you really understand the text so that you're able to say the rhetorical question persuades the reader to do something, whatever the text is talking about. So here it's persuading the reader to give their mobile phone up for charity. Or if you're saying that it encourages the reader to think more deeply, make sure that you say what it's making them think more deeply about. Question 7. What is the purpose of text 3? Explain how you know this. Okay, so this is a 2-mark purpose question. Now, purpose, you should know from your revision, just refers to why the author has written the text. So there are various different purposes that you need to learn for level 2 functional skills, so make sure that you know them before having a go at a past paper. Now, we need to be able to use the clues and the details in the text to be able to spot what purpose it has. And if we look at the number of marks, we know that we need to do 2 things. So the first mark comes from identifying the purpose of text 3. So it's not enough to just say to persuade or to inform. We need to tell the examiner what they're trying to persuade us to do or what they're trying to inform us about. So that's our first mark. Our second mark comes from our explanation. So again, what made you think that it was to persuade or to inform, whatever purpose you've picked. So work backwards and tell the examiner what features of the text show that it is that purpose. Okay, so this text on the right hand side here is a persuasive text, and we know that for various reasons. So in the title or the heading straight away it says time to switch off your phones for charity. So we know straight away that they're wanting us to do something, switch off our phones for charity. So it's for a cause here. We've also got lots of persuasive devices in here. For example, direct address, did you know? I challenge you. We've also got some command words, do it for a week. We've got rhetorical questions, as we spoke about in the last question. Are you prepared to take up my challenge? Did you know that 80% of all 16 to 75-year-olds own a mobile phone? So this is definitely a persuasive leaflet. So if we have a look at our written solution, we've got the purpose of text 3 is to persuade the reader to give up using their mobile phone for a week. So that's our first mark. Notice how the student here has not just said to persuade, they've told us what they're trying to persuade us to do specifically. So remember to do that part for these purpose questions. Then for their second mark, they've given a really good explanation. So I know this because the heading, time to switch off your phones for charity, tells us that the aim is to do this to raise money for charity. So we've really explained there how we know that it's persuasive, but you could have put any of the reasons that we just talked about. Remember, if a text is trying to convince you or encourage you to do something, then it's always going to be a persuasive text. Don't get confused just because we've got lots of facts here. That does not necessarily mean that a text is trying to inform us. We've got to think about the overall purpose. And although we do have some facts here that are giving us information, the overall purpose is to get us to do something, to switch off our phones for charity. Question 8. Text 2 and 3 contain statistics about technology use, but text 1 does not. Why do you think that this is the case? Okay, so this is the first of our comparison questions. So we need to look at all 3 texts and think about the way that they've used statistics and facts. Now, this question is actually very similar to a detail question, so thinking about why text might be more detailed than other texts. So it's very similar to that in the terms of the way we're going to answer it, but the difference is we're thinking about statistics. So a good place to start with a question like this is thinking about why a text might want to use statistics and why it might be easier for some texts to use statistics than others. Notice that it's 2 marks, so we need to give 2 reasons as to why we think this is the case. Now, we can use all 3 texts to explain this. So we might want to give one reason why text 2 and 3 contain lots of statistics, and then we might want to give another reason as to why text 1 doesn't contain statistics, and that's going to help you to be able to give 2 reasons for this question. Okay, so let's first start by looking at text 1. So we want to think about why text 1 doesn't contain statistics about technology use. So similarly to detail questions that are worded like this, we want to think about a few things, or there's a few places that we can start. So firstly would be thinking about the reader, or what sort of reader would be reading this text. So this text is a discussion forum, yourviews.web. So the purpose of it is kind of just to discuss, to give opinions. So the reader of this text would not necessarily be going to it to be informed about lots of statistics to do with technology use. So that could be one reason. It's not necessarily necessary for the type of reader who's going to be reading this text. It also doesn't really align with the purpose, and this is another good thing to start thinking about. What's the purpose of the text, and does that match up with a lot of statistics? So the purpose here, as we've already said, is to discuss or to give opinions rather than to inform the reading using lots of facts and statistics. So the use of statistics doesn't particularly fit with the purpose here. And then also we can think about the type of contributors we've got here, or the type of writers. So they're giving very informal opinions on a very informal discussion forum. So their evidence comes in the form of personal experiences rather than statistics, because they're unlikely to know these statistics off the top of their heads, off by heart. So if we take Gemma for an example, she gives lots of evidence, but it's evidence in the form of personal experience of stuff that's happened to her rather than statistics, and that suits the text type and the purpose of this text. So any one of those reasons would be a good reason to give about why text 1 doesn't contain any statistics. Okay, let's have a look at text 2 then and see if we can work out why this might contain more statistics than text 1. So text 2 is a very academic piece, but it is primarily trying to persuade. So we know that because it's talking about technology addiction, and it's basically listing all of the negative impacts or reasons why we should spend less time on our phones. And then in the conclusion here, it says if we don't, there'll be many problems ahead, not only for ourselves individually, but as a society. So the author here is definitely trying to persuade us against spending too much time on our phones and warning us against technology addiction. So how do the statistics help there then? So it's a persuasive text, so it's trying to influence readers to spend less time on their phones. Therefore, the negative statistics help with this purpose, and they're useful for providing evidence as well. We've got an example here under sleep problems. It says a recent study showed that 47% of adults in the UK missed out on sleep due to internet usage. So that statistic there is a very negative one, and if we're reading that, we're likely to be persuaded to spend less time on our phones. The text also aims to talk generally about technology addiction and how it can affect many people, rather than in text 1 where they're talking very specifically about their own lives, their personal experiences. So that's another reason why we've got much more statistics in this text. Then finally, let's look at text 3 and think about the same question. So text 3 is another persuasive text. It's a leaflet this time. So again, the statistics used are all negative about technology, therefore persuading people to give it up. So quite similar to the previous text. So we've got a couple in these bullet points here. For example, 80% of all 16 to 75-year-olds own a mobile phone. More than half of all family meals are disturbed by mobile phone usage. More than half of mobile phone users use their phones while walking. So these statistics here are designed to shock the reader into giving up their phone or spending less time on it. While the statistics here themselves are informative, it's the way the writers use them that we're interested in. So the writers here are using them to persuade the reader. They use these statistics often to make themselves sound more trustworthy, and also they can choose all positive or all negative statistics to support their purpose. So for text 2 and text 3, we've got a persuasive purpose, so they've chosen all negative statistics designed to shock the reader. Then within that, we've got some research that's been done. Text 1, if we remember, that is just a forum discussion, so people who are contributing on that are likely doing so quite quickly. They're not likely to have done much research, so the evidence that they're going to use is just their personal experiences that they can think of, whereas this text, the author has planned this text, they've done some research in order to try and persuade the reader. So overall, if we have a look at this written solution, remember we've got 2 marks, so we need to give 2 full reasons. So in text 2 and 3, they're giving general information about how technology has affected many people, so the statistics are useful. However, so we're showing we're comparing with text 1. Text 1 is based on personal experiences, so statistics are not relevant or needed. In addition, both text 2 and text 3 are trying to persuade the reader to give up technology, so negative statistics about technology are useful to support their arguments. So we're given 2 full comparative reasons there. So try and pick out a reason why statistics are used in text 2 and 3, then compare that with text 1. Why is that not the case? How is that different in text 1? And then do it again. So 2 full comparative reasons there for the 2 marks. Question 9. Identify the styles of writing used in text 2 and text 3. Give 1 example from each text which suggests that style of writing. Okay, so this is a 4-mark style question. So again, it's similar to the organisational features question in the sense that we don't need to write that much in order to get the marks. So, style refers to the overall way in which a text is written, and there's about 6 styles that you will need to know for your functional skills exam. There are more, but for functional skills, there's 6 main styles that will cover all the text that you need to read. So, if you're not sure about these, then make sure you go back and look at your revision, but these are informal, formal, personal, impersonal, persuasive, and informative. Now, a text can be more than one of these. For example, it could be formal and informative, but it can't be formal and informal at the same time. So make sure you're familiar with those 6 and you're familiar with what examples we can give for each style. Often the mistake a lot of students make for questions like this is that they don't use the correct examples for the style that they've selected. So on the screen now you can see some examples that would be suitable for each style. So make sure that you're really comfortable with what shows different styles and what examples you need to pick for different styles from the text. Another thing to note is often students get informal and informative mixed up. These words are similar, but they do mean completely different things. Informative means to inform the reader, so to tell the reader about something. So often we have facts, statistics, and specialist language in that. Informal is the opposite of formal, so it just means a bit more of a casual style. So contractions, chatty language, and idioms are examples for informal. So if we have a look at text 2, we need to decide what style it is and give an example from the text which shows that style. So remember, an example is just a quotation pulled directly from the text. So straight away we can see that this text is definitely very formal. So it's written using very formal language, for example, words like over-dependent, positive aspects, in moderation. So it's certainly written in a formal way. So any of those words would be good examples of that. We could also give an example of any complex sentences we've got in here. For example, this one, if we're interacting on our mobile phones or using computers late at night, it can be difficult to switch off our brains, yet we still resist switching these devices off. So that would be a good example for the text being formal as well. We can also say this text is informative or persuasive. If we're saying that the text is informative, an example we can give is just any fact from the text. So this would be a good one. A 2014 World Health Organization study of over 5,000 young people in England found that 74.6% of girls and 76.5% of boys use technology for more than 2 hours each day. So any fact from the text is a good example for if you're saying it is written in an informative style. And we can also say that this text is persuasive as well because it is very negative towards technology. It's talking about all of the problems that we can get by spending too much time on technology. A particularly persuasive sentence would be in the conclusion here. We must take effective measures to stop ourselves becoming addicted to this technology. So really trying to persuade the reader there that they need to stop using so much technology. So 3 potential styles for text 2 there. The biggest mistake that students make with this question is not giving an effective example for the style that they've chosen. So make sure that you are really aware of what shows that a text is formal and what shows that a text is informative, and so on. Okay, so now let's look at text 3. So we should already know that this text is to persuade, so it's a persuasive text, and we know that already from previous questions. So if a text is written to persuade, we can say that it's written in a persuasive style, and that's the same with inform and informative. So that's definitely the most obvious style that this text is, but we can also say that it's quite informal. We've got contractions throughout, so isn't, you'll. We've also got an exclamation mark here. This isn't good behaviour. Generally just casual phrasing throughout as well, such as loads of benefits, and also chatting to people face to face. So definitely very informal as well as persuasive. And we can also say that this text is personal as well. We've got lots of the author's own direct opinions, and they use words like you, did you know, I challenge you, and we've also got words like I as well, showing that it's written from the author's personal point of view. So any one of those 3 styles and any of their corresponding examples would work for that text as well. So finally, if we just look at our written solution, so as we said, you don't actually need to write a lot for this question, as long as you know what exactly you do need to write to pick up the marks, and that's why it's useful to watch these videos. So we've got here text 2 style is formal for our first mark there. Then we've given an example. So an example which shows this is thumb, neck and back pain can come from excessive use of technological devices. So we've got some specialist language there which shows that it's formal in the example. Then they've moved on to text 3. So text 3 style is persuasive for our third mark. And then the example they've given is you'll have loads of benefits. So the direct address in there makes it persuasive, and also telling them that they're going to have lots of benefits makes it persuasive as well. So we've got 4 marks for that question there. Compare the views expressed in text 1 and text 3 on the subject of technology and how these views are conveyed. Okay, so this is a comparison question that is very common in Open Awards Functional Skills Level 2 exams. And this is a 4-mark question. A big mistake students make with this question is only answering half of it. So they'll either only focus on the views or they'll only focus on how the views are conveyed. And if you do that, then you're guaranteeing that you can't get more than 2 marks for the question. So it's really important to answer the full question. So let's break down this question and think about where we're going to get our marks from. So the first thing to notice with this question is we've got the word compare. So this just means that we need to focus on similarities and differences. So tell the examiner whether the thing you're talking about in the text is a similarity or a difference with the other text. And we need to do that with 2 things. So the first thing, where our first 2 marks come from, is a detailed comparison of the views expressed in text 1 and text 3 on the subject of technology. So views just refers to points of view, or in other words, opinions. So what are the opinions of the authors of text 1 and text 3 about technology, and are these similar or different across the 2 texts? That's our first 2 marks. Our next 2 marks, and often what people find slightly harder with this question, is how these views are conveyed. Now this just means the methods the writers use to put across their views. So this can be anything that we've learned about through your revision. So It can be to do with the style the texts are written in, so is one text more formal, is the other text more informal? It can be to do with the purpose, so is one text written to persuade, the other text is to inform, and how is that reflected in sort of the language that they're using? You can also think about specific language techniques that they've used, the levels of bias in the texts, and also facts and opinions is a good one to compare as well. But we can basically compare any sort of methods across the two texts. Again, we want to make it clear whether this is a similarity across the two texts, so are they both in a formal style, or is it a difference, so is one text more informal, one text is more formal. Try and make sure that this is kind of a like for like comparison, so try not to make completely unrelated points. For example, if you said text 1 is formal, but text 3 uses rhetorical questions. That's not really a comparison. It's not showing how that's a difference across the two texts. So it would be better to say one text is formal, the other text is informal, or comment on what those rhetorical questions do in terms of the style or the purpose. Okay, so let's have a look at both our texts then and see if we can compare views and how those views are conveyed. So firstly, let's think about the views. Now remember, the topic here that we're focusing on is technology, so we don't need to look at any specific part of the text, just the whole text, anything to do with when they talk about technology. So the first thing I notice is text 3 is very much against technology in terms of its opinion, and specifically towards mobile phones. So they're saying here that all of these facts about people looking at their mobile phones too much isn't good behaviour. So they're really very much against mobile phones. Specifically as well, text 3 thinks that people spend too much time on their phones and not enough time seeing real things in the world and enjoying a social evening with friends. So you can see here they say you'll have loads of benefits such as seeing real things, use the time you would have spent on your phone doing something else, exercise, play a board game, or enjoy a social evening with friends. So they think that there's lots more beneficial things to do other than go on your phone. So let's look then at text 1 and think about the views expressed in text 1. Now notice that we've actually got two lots of views in text 1, and they're actually opposing views within the same text. And that's because this is a discussion forum. So we can see here we've got yourviews.web and we've got different contributors. So if you ever see a text like this, which is a discussion forum with different contributors, it's a good idea to summarise that you know that there's different contributors and then pick out a point from both of the contributors or a few of them if there are more than two, in order to show the examiner that you are aware of the opposing or different views in the same text. So if we have a look in this text, we can see that Raheem has a different opinion to text 1, so there's a comparison to be made there. Raheem thinks that mobile phones are the best thing since sliced bread. He's very much for them. He thinks there's so many ways you can use your mobile phone. It makes communicating with others really easy. So he definitely is for mobile phones, which is different to the views expressed in text 3. However, we do have a similarity as well, and it's important to look at the whole text. So Gemma actually agrees with text 3, or the views expressed in text 3. And we've got a really specific view that's held by Gemma and the writer of text 3. This idea that mobile phones are ruining real interaction and stopping people talking to real people or seeing real things because of mobile phones. So that's definitely a similarity. So next let's think about how the views are conveyed then across the two texts. So a good thing to start by looking at is formal and informal language. Often people find this quite easy to spot in texts. So we can see that both of these texts use very informal, chatty language to convey their views. We could give some examples of that as well. So for example, in text 3, we've got you'll have loads of benefits. Quite casual way of putting it there. We've got casual phrasing like chatting to. and also some direct address, direct question marks and exclamation marks as well, which make it very chatty. And then in text 1, we've got a double exclamation mark here, very casual and informal. Again, directly addressing the reader with the word you and the question there, and contractions as well. It's so infuriating. So both of these texts are definitely more informal and chatty. So are there any differences then in the way the views are conveyed? Well, we can definitely think about what sort of evidence both texts use to back up their points. So text 3 uses lots of statistics and facts to support their points, which we can see in the bullet points here. Whereas text 1, in both Raheem and Gemma's contribution, they use personal experience as evidence. So I'll give you an example from Gemma's contribution. I was on a train yesterday and everyone was silently staring at their phone. So that's the evidence that they're using in text 1. Rather than statistics, they're using personal experience. So that's definitely a difference that we could comment on across the two texts. Okay, so here is the written solution then for this question. Now notice here that the student has written in paragraphs. Now you don't have to do this in your exam, but it can be really helpful to split up the views into one paragraph and then the way the views are conveyed into another paragraph. This will make it really clear to the examiner that you've answered both parts of the question, but it'll also make it really clear to yourself when you're going through and checking your work. You can quickly check that you have answered the question fully. Okay, so if we have a look here, the student has opened by saying in text 1, Gemma states that real interaction is ruined by using mobile phones. So dealing with the views in text 1. Then we've used a comparative phrase. This is supported in text 3. As text 3 says, a lot of us use our phone as soon as we wake up in the morning, and then they've given a quotation to support that point from text 3. Then they've talked about the other set of views in text 1. So however, another comparative phrase there. Text 1 contains contrasting views itself from two different contributors. Gemma generally agrees with the views in text 3, so a comparison again there. However, Raheem does not. So we've got a really full comparison of the views there, using comparative phrases showing the examiner whether it's similar or different. Then in the next paragraph they've talked about the way these views are conveyed. So in text 1 and text 3, so showing that it's a similarity there, the writers use friendly and informal language. So that is a similarity. However, a difference between the two, so again comparing, we're looking at similarities and differences, is that text 1's contributors use personal experience to support their points, whereas, again another comparative phrase, whereas text 3 uses more facts and statistics to back up their argument that mobile phones are used too much. So we've got a really good comparison of the methods, the way the views are conveyed there, looking at a similarity and a difference across the two texts. Which text do you consider to be the least biased? Using all three texts, explain your selection. Okay, so this is a 4-mark question on bias. Now you should know from your revision that bias refers to a one-sided text. That's the number one thing we need to look for when thinking about whether a text is biased. Some other tips for thinking about if a text is biased is a persuasive text will always be biased. So if the writer is trying to convince you to do something or buy something, that text is always going to be biased. And also if we have lots of strong one-sided opinions from the author. A common misconception with bias is that facts mean that a text is not biased. That's not necessarily the case. And what I mean by that is a text can contain lots of facts and still be biased if those facts are all one-sided facts. So if an author chooses all positive facts about something, then that text is likely still to be biased. because there's nothing to indicate that it's negative at all. So just bear that in mind. So this is a 4-mark question. Now, our first mark comes from simply identifying which text is the least biased. That's our first mark. Then, and this is something that often people forget to do for this question, is we need to use all 3 texts to explain our selection. So the easiest way to do this question is identify which text is the least biased and explain why you've chosen that text to be the least biased using that text. And that will give you your second mark. Then we want to take the other 2 texts that we think are more biased and explain what in both of those texts tells us that they are more biased than the text we've considered to be the least biased. And that will give you your next 2 marks. Now, because we need to use all 3 texts, we need to ideally give quotations and evidence from the text to support our points and explain how those quotations show the level of bias in all of the texts. Okay, so first let's have a look at text 1 and decide whether this is biased or not. Now remember, the number 1 thing we need to think about when we're thinking about bias is whether the text is overall one-sided. And although we do have lots of personal opinions from the authors here, we actually have an overall very balanced text. And that's because Raheem and Gemma have completely different points of view. So we've got someone who really likes mobile phones, thinks that they're the best thing since sliced bread, and someone who thinks that they're the worst things ever. So overall, the text is very balanced and not biased at all. So this is where bias can be confusing for some students because they'll just look at this text and see lots of personal opinions, a lack of facts. But you want to look at the whole text as a whole and think about if that text is one-sided. And because we've got 2 opposing opinions from 2 different contributors, overall the text is a very balanced text. So this is definitely looking like our least biased text so far. So now let's have a look at text 2. Now on the face of it, we can see lots of facts in this text. So you might think that this means that it's not biased straight away. However, as we've already mentioned when we talked about the question, we need to think about whether those facts are one-sided or not. And this whole text is very negative about technology. It's about the negative impacts of technology addiction. So we've got sleep problems, isolation, not enough exercise and health problems. So lots of negatives to do with technology. And we've got lots of facts to support those points because it is an academic journal. However, because these facts are used in a negative way and we've only got negative points and facts about technology, this means that this text is actually biased. So this is why it's really important to think about whether a text is one-sided or not as your first port of call when thinking about bias. So finally, text 3 should be fairly easy. We know that this is a persuasive text, and persuasive texts are always biased because they're trying to convince the reader to do something. So here, time to switch off your phones for charity. This is what they're trying to convince the reader to do. The text is very negative towards mobile phones, so we've got lots of facts that are all one-sided facts about technology and mobile phones as well. So this is the model solution then for this question. Remember, it's 4 marks and we need to use all 3 texts to explain why we've chosen that text to be the least biased. So as we've already mentioned, text 1 is the least biased text. That is actually our first mark. Then we explain why text 1 is the least biased text. So text 1 contains opposing views about mobile phones from Raheem and Gemma, meaning that the text puts forward a balance of opinions overall. So really linking that to bias and showing that you understand that bias means a one-sided text. So we've got 2 marks there. Then for our next 2 marks, we need to explain why text 2 and text 3 are more biased. So we've got, despite the fact that text 2 uses lots of facts and statistics, it is very biased. This is because the text puts forward only negative aspects of technology using one-sided statistics to do so. So we've got a full explanation there of why text 2 is more biased. Also make sure that you are saying that it's very biased or it's more biased than the other text, just to show the examiner that you're making a judgment on the levels of bias in each text. Then finally, text 3 is also very biased, as similarly to text 2, it only puts forward negative aspects of mobile phones. In addition to this, the text is designed to persuade the reader to give up their phone for charity, therefore making it biased. So here the student has explained that a persuasive purpose means that it's biased, and also the fact that it's one-sided makes it biased too. We've also got this comparative phrase here, similarly to text 2, showing that we're comparing the levels of bias across the 3 texts.